Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And thank you again for joining me here at the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 23. What an amazing trip. For those of you that follow the podcast, and more importantly, follow us on social media, you know that I just got back from Cabot Links in Inverness, Nova Scotia. You saw all the Instagram posts, the pictures, the videos, even some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that maybe we shouldn't have published, but hey, it was all good fun. I'll have some thoughts to share with everyone in the future on the golf courses, the resort, my group's experience at Cabot, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I got a lot of emails asking for some swag from the pro shop, and yes, I will be able to hook a few of you up with a couple items there. Fortunately, I recorded this episode a while back as a quote-unquote safety episode from a wild weekend of golf. Well, this is the week, and this is the guest. Actually, the timing is perfect since we're just a few weeks away from the U.S. Open. So this week's guest is Mike Weeks from West Palm Beach, Florida. Now, I know what you're thinking. Who's Mike Weeks? I don't know this guy. Well, remember what we're all about here at the Back of the Range. The best stories aren't always on tour. Mike is an old-school grinder, and his story is absolutely incredible. I've known Mike for several years playing around the amateur circuit here in South Florida, but even I didn't know all the stories that he shared in this episode. You want some of his credentials? All right, here you go. The guy got through U.S. Open local and sectional qualifying 3 times. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's some junior phenom that was groomed since he was 7 to be a perfect. No, not even close. He was the number 5 man on his high school golf team. So now you're thinking he found his stride in college and he just blossomed into this NCAA Division. Nope, not that either. He was a member of a junior college team, and he never played a tournament. So how in the hell does this guy make it through to play in the 91 Open at Hazeltine, the 93 Open at Baltusrol, and the 94 Open at Oakmont? Well, that's why he's here at the Back of the Range. Before we get going, you know the drill. Follow us on Instagram, the Back of the Range Podcast. You can also track us down at Facebook and Twitter. The central hub of the podcast is thebackoftherange.com. That's where all the previous episodes are located. And you can also get in touch with me via email, ben@thebackoftherange.com. So let's kick off episode 23. Mike, welcome to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. You know, we always start these episodes off with a little bit of backstory of how our guests get their start in the game of golf. Now, you were a high school baseball player, so how did you make that transition to golf?
I actually ran into, I used to ride the school bus with a couple of guys, Larry Holland, Adam Armagos, who played for North Shore High School. And, I used to sneak on the golf course at North Palm Beach Country Club, and I started playing with those guys a little bit. I wasn't very good, but they needed one more player to, they had 6 players on the team, and their 5 and 6 wasn't very good, and they thought I would be someone that might be able to fill that role. And they asked me to come out for the baseball team or the golf team, I'm sorry. And, that's really how I kind of started getting into competitive golf. I didn't grow up playing junior golf or anything. And I went straight from just sneaking on at the golf course at North Palm Beach Country Club to, making the golf team. And they kind of had me pinned as the number 5 guy if someone had a real bad round. Because they had the 1, 2, 3, and 4 roles pretty much filled. If someone had a real bad round and I happened to play well, maybe they might use one of my scores. And that's really how I kind of got introduced to the game a little bit right there.
That's amazing. So you had none of this AJGA or growing up at a country club and lessons. You just basically had some buddies that thought maybe you can just knock it around and kind of help out the team just a little bit. And you're like, well, I'll go do it. Sure.
Yeah, I had the 10-finger grip, very short backswing, and I would just hit it down the middle. I hit it straight and kept it in play, and found a way to get it in the hole, comfortably.
So you're playing baseball still in high school, and did you chase baseball very much longer before giving it over to golf, or how did the transition from baseball to golf start?
When I got done with North Shore High, I went actually to Palm Beach Junior College, which is now Palm Beach State College, and I was a pitcher. And Dusty Rhodes over there, he would, get us over there. And pitchers ran more than anybody else, and back then, you're talking mid '80s, early '80s, and I didn't think too much about it. I just thought I could, play baseball based off my raw talent, and didn't go into camp in very good shape. And we started camp throwing and catching and mostly running. And after every practice, I would just throw up, and then I had a 45-minute drive home. And after about 2.5 weeks of that, I said, this is not for me. And I quit the baseball team, and I kind of went out for the golf team there and made the team. And the same thing. Larry Holland was there, Greg Weber, you had Jasper Parnevik. I was never on the first starting team at all, but I practiced with them at Atlantis, David Ladd, a lot of local pros.
Yeah.
So I really learned a little bit just going to practice with these guys and just being a practice dummy, I guess.
So you're playing on this junior college team. Obviously, you're learning the game, learning how to play, learning how to score. You played in college tournaments there. Were you on the team to play in tournaments or?
Well, I was, you go to the qualifiers, and I would just barely miss a couple of the qualifiers. I actually didn't play in any tournaments. I continued to miss qualifiers, and I kept plugging along. And after Palm Junior College, I basically just continued. My parents were members at Bear Lakes in the mid to late '80s because of where my dad worked. He ran a company, U&B Transfer Moving and Storage, and they had a corporate membership where it allowed my dad to be a member, which allowed me to go out there and practice and play. And that's really just being in that environment. I started practicing, hitting balls and being around. I learned a lot, and I had a swing coach there that kind of took me under his wing a little bit when he wasn't busy. He'd give me kind of free golf lessons, and his name was Jim Carr, and Jim was, he lengthened out my swing, changed my grip, and, I really improved pretty fast once I started getting some instruction, because before I really didn't have any instruction.
So you're telling me limited high school golf as the 5'6" man, junior college golf, never played a tournament in college. How did you justify going from that to I'm going to try and play professionally?
I had a little bit of success around the club, playing well, playing against, guys like Tom Knapp, Steve Hart. You had some guys by the name of Mark Calcavecchi and Ken Green that used to practice and play out of there.
Sure.
And I started playing pretty decent, and then not an older gentleman from the club offered. He goes, "Hey, I'd like to help you out. Why don't you turn pro?" And I'm like, "Okay," And there were guys, Alice Applegren, Dave Roshman, that they would go up to Orlando and play in these minor league, the JC Goosey tour.
Yeah.
They'd go up there and play the North Shore, Adam Armagast and those guys. So I took the guy up on his offer because I'll pay your entry fees and, let's see where it goes. And, I think it was my third tournament. I made my first check for $525, and I just learned as I went about it. It was just, I kind of really just fell into it, Ben.
So since we're doing our little version here of a U.S. Open preview, you've played in 3 U.S. Opens. So let's start with the first one. You played in the 1991 U.S. Open at Hazeltine. What do you remember about the local and the sectional and getting through? And then, tell me a little bit about the qualifying experience of getting into your first U.S. Open.
The first one, Hunter's Run, just being able to keep it together. I had a friend, John Sanford, who a lot of people would know from the area. I played a lot of golf with John at Bear Lakes at the time, and John offered a caddy for me, and I snuck through the first qualifier at Hunter's Run, just holding on, just finding a way to get it in and just skanking it around, and I finished a couple under par, and then I went to Bay Hill, and I think I shot 2 or 3 under for the 36 holes. I don't know how I did it, and it was, but I did it. It was just,
right.
There's a little perseverance, a little bit of John coaching me around a little bit, helping me with my decision making, not being too aggressive. And I was fortunate. And then, John went with me to Chaska up in Minnesota, and we went up, the Saturday before the tournament. Like Monday was the practice rounds. We got there Saturday afternoon late. we played with some members on Sunday. John and I played the golf course with members. The members were still allowed to play it on that Sunday. And that Sunday, I remember Mike Schultz was the director of golf at the time, and we went in Sunday after our round playing with the members. We went and signed up for the tee sheet, like for our practice rounds on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I was the first guy that signed the practice sheets, and
Sure.
I'm like, 10 o'clock on Monday, 9 o'clock on Tuesday, and then I did 9:30 on Wednesday. So I didn't know who I was playing with. So we show up early Monday morning. It was pretty neat. You get there and they give you we check in, and John would probably remember this more than I, but Phil Mickelson was checking in right in front of us. Phil was so polished. He was still a kid, had come right out of college, Arizona, and he is so polished. He's like thanking everyone at the registration table, and he's got his members only jacket on, and he's got the collar. He's got the collar turned up, and John and I are kind of making fun of him a little bit, like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
And I think John did say that. So then, we check in, they give it a nice, courtesy car, but we show up Monday morning and we go hit balls, and you go to the range and they'd have, a bag of Titleist golf balls and a bag of Max Fly golf balls, and like, Titleist or Max Fly? I'm like, Titleist. And, so we go to the range, we go to the first tee, and it's pretty packed up there. And I go to the starter's tent on the first tee box, and I check in. He goes, who are you playing with? I go, I don't know. He goes, well, let me get a couple guys to join you. And I'm just standing on the tee box. The crowd parts, and here comes Seve Ballesteros and Tom Seekman, who just won like a week or two earlier. And, I'm the first guy on the tee, and Seve doesn't look at anyone. He does the quick hello to the master starter at the time,
Sure.
and tees it up, puts his ball, pegs it right there in the middle. He talks to his caddy a little bit, then he leans over and goes, Seve. And then Tom Seekman came over, introduced himself, and to this day, I still can recall that tee shot because Seve gets up, hits a pretty good tee shot. Tom Seekman gets up there, draws it up the left side into the rough. I got up, and at that time I had a 7-degree Tour Burner Plus
Ooh.
driver with a titanium shaft.
Sure.
And there are people lined the first fairway, and they're just leaning over these ropes. And I'm nervous, this is my first time ever there. And my first thought was, God, just don't kill somebody. And then somehow I was able to just relax. I softened up the arms and I just pumped it right down the middle, and it kind of started from there. I was able to just kind of, get in a nice comfortable zone and not get caught up in where I'm at.
And now playing with Seve, everyone has always spoken so highly of his scrambling and his short game and all the different shots he has around the green. Do you remember anything about any sort of conversations with him, or did you get to see anything like that really kind of stuck out?
I remember there was one shot on 7 that he was back up behind the trees, and he hit a shot from behind a tree, and John Sanford, he drove the way. He couldn't hit a fairway. He missed every fairway.
Of course.
And John, even after he hit that shot, John went up there just to see where his divot was. He goes, I can't believe he was able to get that on the green. And then on the 8th hole, we talked about bunkers a little bit. He talked a little bit about how, his technique, he would set it open, and then on his takeaway, he would rotate the forearms a little bit to add even more loft and use the bounce and really just, the ball would just pop up really soft, and that was back in 91, but, it was an incredible. He didn't talk a whole lot to us because his English wasn't very well, and my Spanish, I don't have any. But it was a great experience, getting to meet him that first time and just being part of it. Now he's no longer with us, which is unfortunate.
So you miss the cut at Hazeltine, and kind of tell me a little bit about like what tours you played on. I know we're going to get you back to the next 2 U.S. Opens that you played in, but between 91, getting out of college, what tours did you play in? How did you keep your game sharp in between these qualifiers?
I played the JC Goosey Tour, the North Florida Tour, and I don't think the Golden Bear Tour might have been trying to start up here locally. But I was able to, I went to tour school in 1992 for the first time, and I was able to get my conditional status, which is now, it was the Ben Hogan Tour, then the Nike Tour, and now the Web.com and so forth. But I was able to get my conditional status, so I was able to get in some tournaments. I think that finals at tour school, I went through the first two stages and was able to qualify and got to finals both times. And so I had conditional status on the Ben Hogan Tour in 92, which back then conditional status would get you in about 20 events. And I think I played like 14 events, 14 of the 20, because a few of them you wouldn't get in until late.
Right.
And I didn't have the means to go, hey, I'm just going to go jump on an airplane. And,
right.
I had to plan out a little bit better than that. Then, 92, I didn't qualify. Then, 1993, I had an opportunity. I went to the stages of going through the U.S. Open again. And that was the same year I was on the Nike Tour. And I played in about 10 or 12 events, maybe 15 events that year. Also had a little bit of success, but not a ton. I always had some lower back issues that my back would, bother me a little bit from time to time. So it seemed like whenever I'd start playing really well, my back would go out and I'd be out of action for a couple of weeks, So a lot of up and downs with my health back then.
Sure. So you get into the 93 U.S. Open at Baltusrol. That's the one that Lee Jansen won. Again, you have this great success getting through the qualifiers. What was your opinion on Baltusrol?
Phenomenal. I think the highlight for me for that one was I went to the local qualifier, Hunter's Run again, and we went to Lake Nona. And, I was paired up. I was a medalist at Hunter's Run. So being a medalist, I got paired up with nice players at Lake Nona. I got paired up with Fulton Allen. And, back then I'm still grooming myself into golfing mentality and so forth, I guess you'd call it. And,
sure.
I remember members coming up. It's like, wow, are you nervous? You're going to play with Fulton Allen. He just won the week before. And, people are like, oh, you got to be nervous playing with Fulty. And it got to the point where people would say something. I said, I'm going to drum him.
Nice.
And it really, my goal was just to get the honors of the tee and keep honors. And, and I ended up playing. It was just one of those days where everything worked exceptionally well. I shot 67, 63, and I shot 14 under for the 2 days. And, I was medalist at Lake Nona, and Fulty and I got to play a practice round at at Baltusrol when we went up there. And the next day I got to play with Nick Faldo and David Frost, and had some just great experiences, great memories. And
absolutely. Well, 130 in a sectional U.S. Open qualifier is pretty. That's got to be a record, or pretty damn near close to one. So you mentioned you played your practice rounds with David Frost and Faldo, and if Faldo and Frost are nearby, then Ledbetter can't be far away. So, that was right around the time when Faldo was. I guess it was. Gosh, that had to have been right around Faldo Norman time when they were kind of battling for number one in the world, and you can kind of throw Freddie in there as well. But just watching Faldo at the height of his game. What were your takeaways on just his action and what he was doing out there?
Just amazing how comfortable he was with everything and everybody. And you're right. Like when we teed off on one, I was asked to join someone else, and we joined them. And David Ledbetter played with us, or didn't play with us. He walked with us during the round, and the three of them just kind of chatted a little bit here and there, but it was nice just to, see how they practice. And, to this day, like going in Hazeltine, going back to our very first screen, John, after my tee shot, I hit an 8-iron in there about 10 feet. I go up, I mark the ball, and I throw the ball to John. And the other two guys, they're not putting to the hole. They're throwing balls in the rough. They're chipping up to, a tee
Sure.
in the green. John and I kind of look at each other, and John kind of shrugs his shoulders, and he goes to the bag, and he gets a couple golf balls, and we start mimicking what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they were the same way. And not to go forward, I remember I got 1994. I got to play a practice round with Jack Nicklaus, and Jack Nicklaus on every green in Oakmont. He'd go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and he would point to where pins are going to be on every green, and he's like, "This is what they're going to do. They're going to play this on this hole," but it was really neat experience, and it's some things that I'll never forget. And it's not very important to many people, but to me, it's pretty cool.
That's why you're here on the podcast. How long? Not to deviate, but how long have you been working on your Jack Nicklaus impression?
Well, it's funny. It's like if you're around him a little bit. The year I qualified there, I got to play a practice round with Gary Nicklaus, Mike Melizia, and Jack and myself. And it was Gary and Jack against Mike Melizia.
And this myself. And I'm going to let you continue the story. I just want to set the scene for everyone listening. So this is your qualifier to play in the '94 U.S. Open at Oakmont. Yeah. So now which you have qualified for. So this is back-to-back U.S. Opens you qualify for. So this is the practice round at the qualifier. Is that right? Or is this what is this practice round for?
This is up at Bay Hill. We played. This is our practice round, and I never played with Jack before, but Mike and Gary and I, we kind of known each other a little bit, and I don't know who set it up, but I was happy to be part of it. But we went and we got paired up for a practice round before the qualifier the next day. So we got to spend 18 holes playing with Jack Nicklaus, my first time ever playing with Jack, and to this day I still have the $2 in my armoire. I finished eagle birdie at Bay Hill to win $2 off Jack Nicklaus and Gary Nicklaus, but I got paid by Jack, and he slams it in my hand and squeezes my hand, and he hit that.
Pissed.
That $2 was like he hates losing, man. It was amazing, and I'm sure Mike would probably remember the day as well. But
took $2 off of Jack Nicklaus in a practice round.
Eagle birdie at Bay Hill.
Wow. So you do the qualifier, and it's 36 holes. It's a 36-hole qualifier in one day. Is that correct, or was it 2 days back then?
No, it's 1 day.
Okay, so it's 36 holes. Tell me about this day, because you had how many rain delays you have? I mean, this day just didn't seem to end, did it?
It rained, poured, and then we had several hours of rain delays, and I'll tell you, it goes back to I never met Mr. Nicklaus before until the day before, but what a great day. I mean, I felt like, wow, what a great experience. I really felt pretty close to him. He made us feel so welcomed, and I'm a little bit of a ball buster, and he likes giving little jabs, and, I tend to give jabs back. And, so during the rain delays, we sat in the pro shop floor for a couple hours. Jack Nicklaus and Jim Carr was caddying for me. He was my teaching pro at the time, and Jim just, he's a Cleveland guy. He grew up idolizing Jack. Jack's his everything. And, so we really spent a lot of time with Mr. Nicklaus and Gary. And, during the rain delay before they sent us back out, I think I was 3 under and Gary was, 2 under or something like that. And, after a rain delay, I had like 5 holes to go, and Gary only had 1 or 2 holes to go. And when I came in, I'm coming up 18. I see Jack Nicklaus standing behind the green, and here I am going, wow, he's out here to just see how I finish.
He's kind of giving you the stink eye because he knows where Gary is.
Well, that's what it was. But at the time, I really thought about that. He was like, I just want to go see how Mike finishes. That's how.
the son I never had. I just want to see how Mikey's doing. Yeah, no.
No, but I didn't think of it that way. And I when I saw him back there, the first thought that popped in my head was, I'm gonna birdie 18 to get in front of Jack, and that was, I hit it in there about 10, 12 feet, and I missed the putt, and I tap it in, I look up, and I was kind of expecting him to kind of like, how'd you play or how'd you finish or something like that, kind of shrug his shoulders and ask, but he's gone.
Yeah, because he knows.
Yeah, I didn't think anything of it, and then I go turn in my scorecard, come to find out that I'm going to be in a playoff, and Gary and I are going to play for one spot. And that was a pretty neat experience, and I was just going through the motions, and it was really dark. It was drizzling rain still.
And Jack was not rooting for you, by the way.
No, I found that out, and and it's funny, and I know we talked about this briefly when I got to that opportunity, with Jack. I didn't think the playoffs was going to be that time at that night, because it was drizzling rain, it was dark, you could barely see, and they sent us out there, and we go to the first tee, and I'm going to fast forward the playoff. I mean, now obviously everyone knows I got in, but Jim Carr goes up to Pittsburgh with me, and Jim Carr and I get in a van to go into to Oakmont to get our courtesy car, and we get in the van with Seve Ballesteros and Mac O'Grady. Oh. And so I go, Mr. Ballesteros, you don't remember me? I said, I got to play a practice round with you at Hazeltine, and his English is much better from 91 to 94. He's like, oh, so you qualify? I said, yeah. I said, I qualified again. It's all good for you. He goes, where did you qualify? And I said, I qualified at Bay Hill. He goes, that's where Jack's son lost in a playoff.
Uh-huh.
And, and I go, well, yeah, I said, I beat him in the playoff. He started, oh, good for you. Congratulations. And And he's like, he goes, what happened? What did the great one do to help to take you out of your focus? And I go, nothing. He didn't. He goes, no. He goes, what did he do? Did he stand next to you? He goes, he did something. He goes, he was the best at getting in people's heads. He goes, he did something to help to get you out of your game. And at the time, I'm like, I don't think anything. And Mac O'Grady's like, just listen to him. He's like, just listen, you'll learn or something like that. And Jim and I are sitting there, and,
right.
And we start replaying the playoff, and, we didn't throw up keys, draw numbers to see who hit first. Gary hit first. He goes, did the great one come up and touch you? Did he stand next to you right before the playoff? And I go, and I start thinking about it. He did. He came up, put his arm around me. He says, hey, Mike, great playing this week. It was a pleasure meeting you. And, the way I looked at it wasn't him taking me out of my focus, but it did, obviously. And,
right.
And Seve says he did that to give Gary an edge. And I never looked at it that way. But we hit our shots. Gary hits on the green. You could barely see it on the green. I hit it in the front bunker. I hit it out about probably 8-10 feet, and Gary hits his putt, and there's probably about 80 people there, 100 people, and they're like, oh, go in. And that's when it dawned on me that everybody there was rooting for Gary Nicklaus, except Jim Carr.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and, probably what Seve was saying to you, and probably what Jack, I mean, I don't know, but I'm guessing that he was trying to kind of get in your head to where you would think, well, you know what? I made it to a playoff, and boy, Jack Nicklaus is my friend, and even if things don't go well, at least I have the great memory of Jack Nicklaus putting his arm around me and wishing me luck and saying how great I was, and maybe that's good enough. And even if I don't, I think that's kind of what he was just alluding to.
Oh yeah, no, and I was just happy to be. I was just on cloud nine, happy to be there, and once everyone said go in, the light went off, and I told Jim, I go, I'm making this spot, and then I made the putt. Gary tapped in for his par, and then on 18, Cal Korf was a USGA official at the time. He said, "This is the last hole, finish or not." This is it. We'll come back tomorrow if it isn't finished here now.
Right.
And we both drove it off 18, and once it left the club, you saw it for about 15, 20 feet, and then you lost it. Then we get up to our ball. I have 186 yards, drizzle rain out of the rough. I get my shot out of the light rough. And Jim Carr's like, that's right at it. That's right at it. And I'm like, shh. Then you hear, ooh. Then you hear applause. All these people going, oh, good shot. We couldn't see it.
Right.
Had no idea where it was. And Gary was about 10, 15 yards in front of me. He hits his shot, ooh, and applause. And they're allowing us to walk or drive the golf cart in the playoff. And we drive up there. There's one ball about 12 feet, one ball about probably 14, 15 inches. And the marshal at the rope, he's like, great shot. I'm like, which one's the first one? He goes, it doesn't matter. They're both great shots.
Of course.
And I'm like, no, it does matter.
Yeah, it does matter. I want to be the one that has a kick in.
Exactly. And I was able to be that one, and I tapped in, and and I did. My heart went out for Jack and Gary at the time, because I'm like, you just saw it, it deflating, and he was hoping
father son in the U.S. Open.
Yeah, and Jim Carr and I, we go to the convenience store. Back then, we didn't have cell phones. I go to call my wife, tell her I qualified, and she already knew, because a friend of ours worked for Golden Bear Industry at the time, and he was giving her the play-by-play, because they got called into work, and they were planning on this big, father-son U.S. Open. It was going to be a big rollout, and so he knew what the result was before I even spoke to her. And as I'm getting ready to leave the convenience store after gassing up, here comes Gary and Jack in these two cars, and we talked a little bit. I said, well, we're going to follow you back up to Jupiter, North Palm Beach, and he's like, well, we have to gas the cars up before we jump on the airplane. And I'm like, wow, and here I am. Well, I'm just going to jump on the turnpike and drive 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Well, I bet your drive had to have been pretty enjoyable. I guess it would be better that than in a plane. So you see, this is not the last you see of Jack. You head up to Oakmont, and gosh, you're up there in your third U.S. Open in a span of 4 years, and you're up at Oakmont, and like you said, you're playing this practice round with Jack. I mean,
yeah,
that must have been a unique experience when you're the guy that kept his son out of the tournament. Now you're playing a practice round with him.
Yeah, no, it was funny when we got back. I called Gary and I said, "Do you think your dad would play a practice round?" He goes, "Call him." So I called Mr. Nicholas, and he says, "Yeah." And he goes back to, we'll play Wednesday at 10:30. He goes, I'll put the group together. And I go up and I see him Monday, and he just kind of waves, and he's like, kind of gives me like, "What are you doing here?" I said, and I gave back to him and said, "I heard there's a tournament in town." And Tuesday, same thing, same on Tuesday. We didn't really talk, but I had heard he invited Greg Norman to join us, but Greg had already invited Freddie Couples to play. So Jack got Hale Irwin to join us. So I got to play my practice round with Hale Irwin and Jack Nicklaus, at Oakmont. And had some really neat things, great experience.
Doesn't get any better than that. How was Jack playing at that time?
Jack wasn't playing that well at the time. And, but he was coaching us around. And when Jack plays a practice round, he plays the ball down. He plays it as it lies. He informed me halfway down in one that he walked back to me. He goes, "Mike, I don't sign autographs." He goes, "I will make time after the round to sign autographs." Because people were asking for autographs, and I'd go down to and I would sign autographs, and made it very clear after the round we'll do that. And but Jack was struggling a little bit at the time, and one of the neat things, and a plug in for Jim Carr, as our round. Actually, I got to tell number 9 first. As we come up 9, he asked his caddy, he goes, get me something to eat. And Jack, as we're putting out on 9 and everything, we go to 10 tee box and we get up to the tee and his caddy was there and didn't have sandwiches. Didn't have a sandwich for Mr. Nicholas. He's like, he goes, where's my sandwich? And his caddy goes, well, I couldn't get you anything because the guy wasn't at the grill in the men's locker room. And, Jack, went over to him quietly and said, when you work for Jack Nicholas, can't. He's not in your vocabulary.
There you go.
And then next thing you know, the state trooper, I have pictures, Jim Carr and the state trooper went into the kitchen, and Jim said it was absolutely amazing. He went in there, Mr. Nicholas wants a sandwich. And they're like, well, what's he want? And nobody knew. So they made this big silver tray, and they probably had 10 or 12 sandwiches on there. They brought out a bag of drinks. And we have pictures of the state trooper walking down 10 fairway with a big silver tray of sandwiches.
Oh my God.
And then on 11, we ate sandwiches and I got a drink and, but it was such a neat memory there then. And my plug into Jim Carr, and Jim wasn't caddying for me there. He went up as my golf coach there. I got a local caddy and actually the Roonies lined that up for me. And the Roonies are members at Bear Lakes at the time, and they still are. They lined me up with a caddy up there that they use on a regular basis that they thought the local knowledge would go a long way. And but when we got to 16, there's a long wait on the par 3, and Jim Carr and Jack started talking a little bit. And at the time, I was playing really well. I think I was 2 under during my practice round. And this was my year to make the cut, in 93, I missed the cut by a shot. 94, my goal was to make the cut in the U.S. Open. I mean, that's really what I wanted. And Jim, and I'm just kind of listening. He goes, Mr. Nicholas, do you mind if I say something? He goes, Mike's playing really well, and he does something really well in his swing that you used to. He goes, you've lost your spine angle and your setup. He goes, he goes, when you were in your prime, all your books, you used to be 12 inches behind the ball. He goes, right now, your left cheek is even with the ball, and he would lose his width in his swing. And the next thing you know, Jack's standing on the side of a hill on the tee box and just trying to line up behind the ball. And if we went back and were able to count all the strokes from there until 16, Jack had to be probably 14 or 15 over par. He was really struggling.
Wow.
And Jack kept working on setup. Hard 16, he birdied 17, and he almost birdied 18. And then the first round of the tournament, Jack goes out and shoots 66. And I owe that first round to Jim Carr. Jim.
I mean, what balls on Jim Carr just to walk up and say, hey, excuse me, hi, I know you're the best player, of the modern era, but do you mind if I give you a swing tip?
Well, it started like, what Mike does well. He does something that you.
He phrased it perfectly, but still, he phrased it great, but it's still gosh.
Oh yeah.
Did Jim ever talk to you about like after the fact, like the internal battle of, because to go give a swing tip to Jack Nicklaus in a practice round of the U.S. Open, that's not the exact same thing as giving a swing tip to some guy at the local club that you see struggling. Hey, you mind if I help you out with? This is different. That's all world stuff right there.
But Jim, I think that Jim's like, Mr. Nicholas, he goes, I've read every book. He goes, I've watched you from wherever, and you used to do this really well, and you're not doing that right now. And wow. Mike does it really well. His club stays really square through impact for a long period of time, and his arms have room to swing down the target line, and God, and to this day, I haven't talked about it much. And this past year, I think last year, the Open was at Oakmont, and they played all the courses in my venue. They played Minnesota, Chaska, they played Baltusrol, and they played Minnesota for the majors.
Yeah.
Just this past year. So Jim called me, are you watching? I still remember, Great memory.
Absolutely. So you played your 3 U.S. Opens. How much longer did you keep your professional status before getting reinstated as an amateur?
Even in '94, I was already considering giving up playing, pursuing. I didn't want to. I didn't grow up wanting to be a golfer. I just I love competing. I love. Someone tells me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. I took my first job in the golf business at Oakmont. I actually didn't know Rob Young at the time, but I was introduced to Rob Young, who was the director of golf for the head pro at Emerald Dunes Golf Club, and he's from Pittsburgh, Natrona Heights. So someone had made the introduction, and I stayed in Rob's parents' basement during that trip. And then after the Open and everything, I interviewed. I went up to the golf show and thought about getting on the sales end of some product line or something, trying to stay in the golf business. And then I decided to get into golf business. I took a job with, I interviewed with Rob Young, and he hired me over at Emerald Dunes. I worked for Ray Finch back when Emerald Dunes was a daily fee golf course, and got in business for there and worked there until it was sold a couple times. And then I had the opportunity, the same person that kind of talked me into turning professional helped me out with that, helped me get my foot in the door at Bear Lakes. Kevin Murphy and Kevin Richardson, who's a local attorney. Kevin kind of helped me get my foot in the door at Bear Lakes, and they wanted Bear Lakes to go in a little bit different direction with a membership person, instead of just having someone who wasn't really golf knowledgeable, just handing out paperwork, filling out, crossing T's, dotting your I's. And they wanted me to kind of spend time with every individual as they're coming into the club, get to know them, help them into the club. And so to this day, I still have the best job. As people are looking into the club, I find out their personality, how they play. I help them during a round. I normally play either 9 or 18 holes with them. And if they end up wanting to go forward, I'm very involved in going, hey, Peter, you need to meet this guy, Scott. This guy, similar background. And, I just matchmake.
So you're a matchmaker at Bear Lakes right now. You're the membership director.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, and gosh, I mean, you started there, just fallen in there because your parents are members, and now you're in charge of growing that club and populating its membership with great people. Bear Lakes is also a real hotbed for up and coming pros. I mean, I'm in the area of West Palm Beach, and I know that there's just tons of guys out there that are, playing on the mini tours and working on their games. So give me an idea of just one of the guys out there that just is chasing the dream and just doing things that you're seeing like, wow, these guys are just amazing.
Oh yeah, no, and it kind of goes back to Brooks Koepka. When he graduated at Florida State, he came down, he joined Bear Lakes. He used to practice out of there. Cardinal Newman practiced out of there. Chase Koepka worked there. Chase is a member. And Brooks, when he graduated, he joined as a junior member at Bear Lakes. He didn't get through first stage. He went to Europe, and there he is now. He's a U.S. Open champion. He's a member of Bear Lakes. We don't see him as often now, but because of his success, he's traveling more, and he's a little further north of the club now, living, and he plays out of Medalist. But no, his first choice was, and affordability had a factor in that too at the time, but he joined Bear Lakes, and we've always attracted guys like that. And it doesn't matter what level you play at. There's always a game. We have a lot of organization for games, but we have a young man by Dan McCarthy. We were talking about Dan, and Dan was playing the minor league golf tour for a couple of years, and had mild success. And he recently had kind of a breakthrough. He got his Canadian Tour status, finally got that first big break. And his first year on the Canadian Tour, he won 4 times, and he had 2 second-place finishes. He went from really not doing anything for almost 3 years, 4 years maybe, to coming out. Just something clicked. And he did the most fascinating thing. And this past year, we do a members pro scratch, which is a member guest in December. No handicaps. You play the tees by your age. The Rigos, very generous, and they contribute to the purse, and the Roonies contribute to the purse. And Dan McCarthy this year at Bear Lakes from the Gold Tees, which is 7,400 yards. He birdied 11 of the last 12 holes on the Lakes golf course, which I don't care. You put Dustin Johnson on the white tees and he's not going to do that.
That's I don't think I've ever heard of anyone doing anything close to that.
I mean, he birdied 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and he parred 14. He birdied 15, 16, 17, and 18, and he looked out for eagle twice on 2 of those birdies.
Good God.
I mean, he just caught fire, and he's on the web.com this year, and I mean, that guy, when he gets it going, it's these kids nowadays, it's just amazing, and we have a lot of those guys, and they practice and they compete with each other, but they play with the members. You know, it's such a cool environment because, you know, we do combination blue and black and gold tee games, and it's really exciting time to be at Bear Lakes, man. I'm thrilled.
That's great. Well, I'll definitely put the link to the Bear Lakes Country Club website in our show notes, and definitely get this episode over to the people at Bear Lakes so they can share it. And I'm sure a lot of the members and people that bounce around at Bear Lakes know a little bit of your history, but maybe they don't know it all. So this will be good for them to listen to. So before we let you get out of here, we have a couple of quick questions here on the episode. It's called the Quick Bucket at the Back of the Range. So, gosh, I shudder to think of what your answer is going to be with this one, but it is a Nicklaus question. So Jack Nicklaus won the Masters in 1986 at the age of 46. So take that victory and compare it to a potential 5th green jacket for Tiger Woods at the Masters. What would be the more substantial victory?
Wow. Tell you what, I watch golf now because of Tiger, but that 86 Masters, I mean, that was golf. That was the biggest moment, I think.
Yep. Hard to argue that one. Let's see. You can give a major championship to anyone in history, alive or dead. 0 majors, 18 majors. Give it to whoever you want to. Who would you give a major championship to?
Wow.
And you can't give it to yourself. We've had to make some rules with this question. Some people want to give it to themselves, give it to me. I'm like, no. Let's. Who do you give it? Who would you give it to?
You know, I don't know if I can answer that. I'd have to really think about that one for a little while. I mean, I'd love to give it to a great ambassador and of the game and genuine person. And you know, I don't think I could answer that to be honest. I mean, wow. Who would you give it to?
Well, I would give a PGA to Arnie, because that would complete the Grand Slam for Arnie. And I know that Arnie really wanted that one because his father was his father's history with the PGA of America. So that's the first one that I thought of. Gosh, also I also think about Mike Donald. Nothing against Hale Irwin, but that's 3 for Hale Irwin, and gosh, it seems like that would have made everything for Mike Donald. So those are things that I come up with.
Yeah, no, that 2 good choices.
Well, Mike, really appreciate the time. Super appreciative of you sharing your stories of playing in 3 U.S. Opens. That's an incredible accomplishment. Hope you enjoy the U.S. Open this year at Shinnecock. You got an early pick. Who do you like to win this year?
I'd love to see Ricky. I want Ricky to win a major and a big one, and that would be special. I mean, great for golf.
Well, there's your answer right there. That's who you want to give your major to. You want to give the U.S. Open to Ricky, so we got that one in. All right, man. Well, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us here at the Back of the Range, and hopefully we'll catch up, play a little golf pretty soon.
And thank you so much for having me.
And there you have it, another great episode here at the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. Special thanks to Mike Weeks. Wow, great stories. Really enjoyed hearing all these stories about getting into 3 U.S. Opens. That's quite an achievement. So we'll be back next week. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, the Back of the Range Podcast. Let me know what you think of this episode and shoot me an email if you have any other comments and questions. Ben@thebackoftherange.com. Have a great week. We'll see you next time here at the Back of the Range.